Joining us now is Raymond Powell, a maritime security expert. Ray, thank you for joining us again.
Good morning.
Good
How are you?
morning.
Oh, well, Ray, it's interesting, these developments this past few days. It looks like China is adding another layer of attacks, this time attacking our officials, Tarriela, our senators, even you, at some point because of a piece you did against them. Is this really a stance of China defending themselves, or are they testing Philippine resolve?
Well, I mean, it does seem like it coincided somewhat with the arrival of the new ambassador. So, it's worth speculating whether this is just sort of the style of this ambassador to be more combative. We've seen this in the past. We often will refer to it as wolf warrior diplomacy, after kind of a famous Chinese film that called The Wolf Warrior, and the idea being that this aggressive kind of diplomacy. When I was in embassies, we often used to wonder what drove the Chinese to do this, and there was sometimes, is it direction from Beijing, or is this just the way that these diplomats think that they can get noticed by people in Beijing who they want to impress?
And recently, Ray, you wrote a piece, an investigative piece about how they're spreading their propaganda here in the Philippines, and it angered, I think, the Chinese embassy. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, we've been unpacking for a little while now who is behind the Chinese language media in Manila, and this is something that's a phenomenon around the world, in that over the last couple of decades, you've seen the Chinese Communist Party sort of take over a lot of the Chinese language media, and they're trying to weaponize the overseas Chinese against their host countries in many cases. And so, we were sort of able to reveal that some of the people that are involved with this are people who have been long associated with the United Front Work Department, which is the Chinese Communist Party's way of projecting itself into other countries. And we've gone through some of the statements by the people involved in some of these Chinese language media, in which they seem to be going out of their way to swear fealty back to Beijing.
But what is your response on Chinese claims linking you to our PCG spokesperson, Commodore Tarriela? Apparently, he is working for you. Where did this come from?
I need to figure out where all this money I'm supposed to have is coming from, and these big bags that I'm supposed to be handing to Tarriela. I mean, to some degree, I think this is just a narrative. It's a very convenient narrative. When transparency became the sort of the tactic of the Philippines in response to China's gray zone warfare, I was also associated with that same tactic. So that kind of links us together in that way. And so it's easy to just say, well, Ray must be a CIA agent. He must be working undercover. And I often will say, if I'm a CIA agent, I'm like the dumbest one ever, because, you're not supposed to have a big social media account and go on television all the time as a spy, I don't think.
And Ray, do we expect now, moving forward, it's like they're attacking everyone. They're going to ramp up their social media presence here in the Philippines and other media outlets?
Yeah, that seems to be their current line of attack, is to use social media very heavily. And of course, the Philippines is a very online country. It's a very Facebook country, a very YouTube country, a very TikTok country. So that's probably, they're going to use your open society against you, knowing that you can't strike back because you can't leverage their, because in their closed society, the Philippines can't go on the counterattack in the same way.
So how then, Ray, does this weaken, the arbitral ruling that we're holding on to in terms of how the society will react? Because a lot of Filipinos will simply say, we have this ruling, but China's not respecting it. And other countries will see, China's not respecting it. Why should we respect any ruling that we may have in the future?
Yeah, so that is the tactic, right? What it is to be very belligerent and scare everybody off of your defense, right? So if you've got a schoolyard bully and he wants to throw his weight around, then you threaten everybody. And if one person stands up and he beats that person up, then everybody else says, well, I don't want any part of that. So that is the tactic. And, the response I think that the Philippines has shown over a period of 3 years, it has been pretty remarkably restrained, and I think has got the Philippines a lot of international credibility.
Well, as harassment at sea continues, some of our officials here in the Philippines urge silence, no, in the name of diplomacy. What do you have to say to that?
Well, I mean, so I think that diplomacy has to be smart and measured, and I think all of that is good. I think, though, that the understanding that what China is essentially trying to do is shout you down, right? Is trying to make it so that anything that you say is treated as this horrible provocation, but anything that they say is just fine. And again, that's just the tactic of a bully. It's, we saw this in Japan, right? Where the Japanese prime minister made some very reasonable remarks about what an invasion of Taiwan would mean for Japan, and all of a sudden you saw this consul general in Osaka come out and talk about cutting off her dirty neck. Yeah, and that guy still has a job, right? I mean, that would be the kind of thing that any other country would say, let's pull that person back home. And the fact that he hasn't been declared persona non grata by the Japanese and that they haven't recalled him tells you a lot about how China is doing diplomacy.
And, well, of course, the sending of this new envoy to the Philippines coming from the U.S. nonetheless is also a signal that they're sending in their big guns to Philippine territory. So do you think silence at this point will cut it for us, or do we need to level up, maybe declare somebody persona non grata?
Well, I think that's a tactical decision I'll leave up to the president. I think that if Prime Minister Takaichi in Japan, whose neck was supposed to be cut off, decides not to declare the Osaka consul PNG, it's probably not out of bounds for the Philippines to show even more patience. But I think that China is doing itself a lot of harm this way. And this is why we would always wonder, why do they do this? Because it doesn't help them in the public mind. It doesn't help them. They're not winning anybody over. This is all about an attempt at intimidation. But there are certainly, I don't think that there are large numbers of Filipinos suddenly saying, boy, those Chinese, they have a great point.
So it's interesting you said that, Ray, because you said they're not winning anybody over. So do you think China is taking notice of this? Do they really care whether they win anybody over? Because they've put on an image that I don't care what anybody thinks, but deep inside, you think they really care what the community thinks about them?
I think that they believe that the community can be bullied. And so ultimately, they think that it's better to be feared than loved. And so they're gonna double down on fear.
Interesting.
Interesting point. But recently, our senators here in the Philippines has filed a resolution asking the Department of Foreign Affairs to file more diplomatic protests against China. What do you have to say to that?
Well, so that's one of the features of a democracy, right? Is you don't have a single leader who makes all the decisions and, has all the power. And so when you have a Department of Foreign Affairs that's negotiating with their Chinese counterparts and they're trying to bully them, they can point back and say, look, I've got the legislature is after us, trying to, saying that this is totally out of bounds. You guys are not helping me. So if you're trying to get me to give ground to you, what is my legislature going to say to that? So I think it actually empowers the Department of Foreign Affairs to an extent to have the legislature sort of lay down these markers and give them, sort of a reason to push back beyond just the fact that this is completely unreasonable behavior.
It's like pushing back, but this time using Congress or the Senate instead of the president himself. Question here is, some are saying that China's grown tired of how brave we are in dealing with the West Philippine Sea issue with water cannoning and stuff, and they have not been able to provoke us into some sort of an action. Do you think the same tactic will work now in how China is doing their propaganda? Silence is key until they just get fed up and try something else?
Well, I think that they're going to continue to push because the Philippines is not the only audience. They are also trying to impress other countries and say, well, don't be like the Philippines. You see what they got. Maybe you'll get some too if you push back. I've been tracking a lot of the recent the China Coast Guard and Maritime militia activity off of Vietnam. And China has a lot of reasons to be angry with Vietnam right now because Vietnam has been building out its own islands in the South China Sea. And they have not figured out exactly how to push back on that. So that instead they've been focused on the Paracel Islands closer to Hainan. And so I think, some of this is leveled at the Philippines, but there's also sort of a hidden message that other countries shouldn't try to do this because this is what you get.
Well, I was wondering what could be the implications of, there's a division of opinion of our officials here. Some officials would say keep silent, just to appease or for the diplomacy of our country. But some would say go fight for our rights. So
we don't have a unified stance.
Yeah.
Well, what Winston Churchill always used to say, that democracy is the worst form of government except for everything else that's been tried. Angela, it's the messy thing about a democracy is that, we're going to have all of these different voices. And, I will say that in the Philippines, like in some other countries, there are divisions about China that are not quite as stark as in some other places. Like in the United States, we had huge divisions in our democracy over Russia, whereas we're a little more unified on China. So, this is just one of those things that happens in democracies. And of course, China knows very well how to try to exploit all of that.
Well, interesting points, but so little time. But hopefully we get you back on the show, Ray.
Thank you so much.
You always seem to. I must like you guys a lot.
Thank you very much for that. Raymond Powell, a maritime security expert.